Hi everybody, Dan here. I want to go over some of the key concepts in our reading today. And let's begin with active listening. You can't say too much about active listening because it's very, very important. And it's something we have to really be aware of in every single negotiation. It's not as if we become very experienced negotiators and we're automatically active listening. It's something you really, really have to cultivate in real time during the negotiation. And so you ask questions that solicit information, questions that you cannot give a yes or no answer to. Could you tell me more about this or that? What if we did it this way? Or how would that work? And then we have to listen carefully. Now, often when we listen, we're apt to be thinking about our own position, how to phrase our own position, how best to present it. Meanwhile, somebody's talking and revealing interests that we're not catching. And so I really appreciate the honesty of many of the posts on discussion board when we talked about this. I mean, some of you really talked about kind of serious misunderstandings because you weren't listening. I mean, they were humorous in a way, but they were also serious enough where you lost the negotiation. By the way, these are the kinds of posts that are so valuable to all of us. So don't be shy, be open. I'll share with you my failures. Believe me, I've failed on this more times than I'd like to remember. It's very, very important that we listen and not be thinking about what we're going to say next. Now, speaking of listening, the book talks about bringing a designated listener into a negotiation, somebody who is acting essentially as a stenographer. I just want to ask you rhetorically, what do you think about this? I mean, let's just imagine you're in a room negotiating with somebody else, but now they have a designated listener. So it's you now against two in a way. At least you're facing two people. Would you feel compelled to bring your own designated listener? This listener is not talking because that's not their job. So would you be comfortable with that? Would you try to engage that listener to make sure that they truly understand your position and your suggestions? How do you know they're writing down accurate stuff if you don't get feedback from them? I don't know how useful a designated listener would be in a one-on-one negotiation. I think if somebody were to do that, it would, I don't know, it might spoil the climate for give and take, for sharing. I think it would be appropriate with team-on-team negotiations where you have management negotiating with unions and you have lots of people in the room, then yeah. But I don't think a designated listener strategy would work in a simple one-on-one negotiation, because I think it might be interpreted as a tactic, as an attempt to have a little one-upmanship on the person that you're negotiating with. That's just my feeling about this. The book talks about beginning with the end. I think it's a great idea. You want to paint this wonderful vision of the result of your negotiation in which you're both basking in the sunlight of a win-win solution. But of course, you have to make sure it's a shared vision, not just your dream, not just your side of the vision. The problem is, and the book doesn't go into this, this is the beginning of the negotiation, and you haven't yet identified their true interests. So how do you come up with a golden vision of shared interests when you don't know their interests? I think you have to be a little careful about this. It has to be kind of vague. It has to be, by necessity, kind of simplistic, because you don't know yet what their true interests are. So you can do it. You can paint a golden vision in which you're both smiling. And it can be somewhat specific to the negotiation. It has to be specific to the negotiation at hand. But you've got to be a little careful, or you're going to end up biasing that golden vision to your side. And of course, it's not going to work. The book talks about the norm of reciprocity. I think this is a very powerful psychological force. When somebody shares information, we feel obligated to share as well. So I just want to amplify. Give the other party an opportunity to share. Don't just keep on talking. Sometimes in our nervousness, we'll share information and then keep on talking, denying the other party an opportunity to share some of theirs. Now, this norm of reciprocity also applies to concession making. If we make a small concession, it does put pressure on the other party to make a concession themselves. Now, I say here in parentheses, so it's good to ask for more. What I mean by this is, and this is kind of to remind me to say this, you can be in a negotiation where there is really no opportunity to realistically get more, and yet you ask for it. Why would you do that? You do that because the other party is going to turn you down. Let's say you're negotiating for a salary, and let's say it's some kind of position where the salary is stated and public, and that's the salary. And that's where you're going to start. There's no way you can get more out of this. Let's just assume that. But you ask for more anyway, because when the other party denies you, they will feel a certain compulsion, or they will feel a little compelled to give you something else. They can't give you that, but they might give you something else. So even if you know ahead of time you're not going to get more of what you want, they might give you something on an oblique angle that may be very useful to you. So don't be afraid to use the norm of reciprocity. Don't be afraid to give a little bit, because you may get back in a larger proportion than what you have given. The book talks about packaging the issues. In other words, instead of going through the issues one by one, creating an overall solution. Nothing is settled till everything is settled. Well, I agree with that, but I've got to say that there is something to be said about settling the issues one by one, because you and your negotiator, your counterpart, begin ticking them off the list. And it does build a kind of momentum. If you tick off 4 or 5 items and there are 3 or 4 more to go, you're both kind of in the mood now to tick off more. So I'm not totally against settling issues one by one, because you do get to points. Let's say the negotiation has to be not stalled, but reopened later in the day or later in the week. At least you have checked off these issues. So it's almost like a memorandum of agreement. The book talks about responding to high-level assertions. In other words, somebody is screaming at you, you're charging too much. That is the time to bring out your objective criterion and show them, well, no, actually, look, if we look at the facts here, and this puts your party, your counterpart in much more of a defensive position, and they almost want to apologize for yelling at you when confronted with the truth. But you got to do it in a gentle way. The book talks about framing. I think this is important. You want to frame on specific issues. Sometimes you do leave other issues out. Picture a picture frame. Let's say you're selling a farm, and it's a beautiful farm, but and you're photographing this farm for an ad. Are you going to include the pigsty? Maybe not. You're going to have a beautiful shot of the farmhouse and this wonderful meadow. And this is what salespeople do. For example, they've reframed the price of the car into monthly payments, Or they'll reframe the price of the car with powerful imagery. Imagine driving this car, you know, to pick up your date, and you know it's a fancy, beautiful sports car. Or let's say they're talking to a family member. Imagine taking your family out on a camping trip in this van. Uh, Here's a good example of reframing. Instead of demanding a raise from your boss, you could ask for a performance review. And so I think that's an excellent way to get about it, because if you ask for a raise, you put their back up. If you ask for a performance review and you have done a good job, you've put them in a position where they're telling you, hey, you've been great. You've been great. And it's almost a logical next step to get more money for it. When we do frame, we cannot assume that our counterpart shares that frame of reference. They may look at things completely different. Things may be less important to them that are important to us. This is especially true in cross-cultural negotiations where the frame of reference is totally different. So you want to try to discover their frame of reference, and that can be done with active questioning. Here's a couple of, these are negative examples, but I think they're illustrative. Remember the Boston Marathon case? What did the defense do? They reframed the issue of innocence and guilt into the younger brother being brainwashed by his older radicalized brother. So that was a reframing, and it didn't work. But look at the O.J. Simpson trial. The defense reframed innocence or guilt into that of a racist cop mishandling or even planting evidence. And that did work. One thing I want you to remember, the book talks about this, is that every negotiator has a constituency, almost every one. The book touches on this, but this is a huge problem, because usually there are people in the shadows behind every negotiation, even the simplest negotiation. And you have to, well, let's say, for example, that used car thing that we talked about. The guy is selling the Jetta. His wife may be saying, don't come back here without $11,500. He may have a lot of pressure on him, but the wife is not there. You don't know that. In some negotiations, you have to make sure you're talking to the decision maker, because if you're not, you're wasting your time. And this is a very delicate technique, because you don't want the person you're negotiating with to lose face. You can't put them in the spot where they admit they don't have decision-making authority, but you could be wasting your time. Believe me, deferring the decision-making authority is a very common negotiating tactic, especially in sales. I had to confront that all the time. Also, I want to end with this. Sometimes in a complex negotiation with another organization, your biggest obstacle may not be them, it may be your own management, your own people who are insisting on a certain price or insisting on a certain term and condition. And they're saying, go back, go back, go back and get this. So sometimes you have to negotiate with your own people, even harder than you negotiate with the representatives of the organization that you're negotiating with. Okay, I hope I didn't go too fast, but you know, I'm on a certain time limit with these YouTube things, or else YouTube gives me a hard time when I try to publish it. All right, thank you so much. Talk to you soon.